Hey y'all, it's Wesley, and today we have a very exciting discussion about how to assess our students without a test. First of all, it really is important to assess our students. However, for years it's been the same old thing. You test them with paper, pencil, test. Now we want to get really innovative and use Google Forms, and we're like, that's awesome. I'm integrating technology. It's really cool. I'm really advanced. No. The real way to really diversify your testing procedure are going to be laid out in this video. Okay? So, why should you look for different ways to assess your students? The answer is simple, and I have two parts to it. The first reason you should look to diversify your testing procedures is because it makes your students happier. And we all know that happy students are students that are learning, okay? Another reason, number two, that you should learn to diversify the way you test your students is because you can actually do better than test them. You can increase their knowledge base while you're testing them. You can aid them in learning even more during your testing period. So the traditional test, all you do is say what you know, say what you remember, and recall and regurgitate what you have learned over the last days, weeks, or months in school. We are going to go beyond that with our ways to assess. So, number one, I suggest that you do something that's called an unessay. If you Google that term, you're not going to find a whole lot of information on it. Had you asked me a few months ago what is an unessay, I would have been very vague. Now I would tell you that an unessay is not so much what it is that's important, is what it is not. And what it is not is the traditional paper pencil 30 question, 60 question test. Multiple choice, short answer, constructed response. So basically an unessay is anything but that. You basically tell students to create something based on the content that you want to cover. I'm going to use a novel for an example, as I'm a literature teacher. So after we got done with Arthur Miller's The Crucible, I told the students that you're going to create something that is of interest to you. And it basically has to do three things. It has to tie in very closely to the text. It has to go beyond the text. And it has to be well produced and presented. And I also gave them a rubric to outline this. I let them also help me create the rubric, and that was really interesting to see what they expected of themselves. So the results were nothing short of astonishing. I learned so much more, and my students learned so much more by doing an unessay. One student, for example, used Legos to create the courtroom of the Salem citizens. However, when you flip the courtroom around, the Lego courtroom, there was another creation of Joseph McCarthy's courtroom in the Senate in the 1950s. How did he know to do this? Well, we had spent time in class comparing the 1950s witch trials of communism and the 1600 Salem witch trials. Great connection. And he went above and beyond what I taught them by doing research to see how would a Senate hearing look. I was so totally blown away. As I'm not a Lego man, I would have never thought of that. But this was his personal interest, and he brought it into this project, and he learned, and he showed me what he learned, which is the whole point of an assessment. Now, totally on the opposite of that, I don't know if it's exactly opposite, but different. Another student made bread. She found a recipe of bread that would have been made at that time in Salem, and she did a lot of research on ergot poisoning, which they think might be the reason that everybody was acting so loony in Salem at the time. What was really neat about her project is it was multi-fold and complicated. Not only did she have to find a recipe, cook the bread, she also did an extensive writing project, like a blog entry, to help other people know how to write or how to bake the bread. And she had a technology component because she made a whole website with workable links, live links in it with multiple pages. And there was a whole section about ergo poisoning in Salem, Massachusetts. So totally and absolutely more extensive than anything that I ever could have required through a traditional test. So unessays are the way to go. It's not about what they are, it's more about what they aren't. Number 2 tip, make an assessment based on technology. Now look, again, using Google Forms to take your paper and pencil test to a online test is not technology-based assessment. I mean something more like this. When we got done with The Great Gatsby, I told my students to create a movie trailer if the book was going to be a movie. We know that it is a movie, and we actually watched the 2013 Leonardo DiCaprio version of the movie, and they had to make a book-related movie trailer. Again, they had to know the content, so they had to read the book to know what the best parts were to put in the movie trailer. This is also working on their summarizing and analyzing skills. They can't put every single detail into a 1.5-minute trailer, so they had to know the most important parts and the climax and the dramatic parts. They also used their technology skills, and it was fun. They enjoyed it. Use technology to not only create movie trailers, but you can require them to make a live blog, or you can require them to look up the price of a house in Manhattan or wherever, a apartment that Tom would have been renting in downtown New York. I'm just talking off the top of my head, but you get the point. Have them use technology to create something, not just regurgitate. Create, not regurgitate. Number 3, get your students to build models of something. Perfect example. When I taught 6th grade, our standard was the Cold War, the Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain, and one of the concepts that was kind of hard for them to comprehend is the difference between the Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall. One was literal, you could touch it. One was metaphorical. So what I did, instead of giving them that 10-question quiz about the Berlin Wall versus the Iron Curtain, I said, we're going to make a Berlin Wall. So I found some recipe online that required a lot of salt, flour, and water, and you basically made a dough that would harden. Now you might say that sounds like a whole lot of fun, but how is it educational and how is it an assessment? Well, I gave very little instructions. They had to research, where was the Berlin Wall? What is Germany shaped like? Then they created a Berlin Wall after they drew Germany on a poster. They constructed the Berlin Wall with their dough. Still weren't done. They had to have 10 facts that I did not teach in class to go along with their project. They're working in groups. And they had to make the Berlin Wall, that their created Berlin Wall, much like the one that was actually in Germany. So it had a lot of graffiti on it. Well, the graffiti was on which side? The pro-communist side or the pro-democracy side? Obviously the pro-democracy side, because the pro-communist side wouldn't let their citizens near the wall. If they put their graffiti on the wrong side of the wall, then I was assessing their knowledge. The graffiti also had to represent a pro-communist or pro-democracy message. So we were learning so much about the Berlin Wall beyond what the textbook or even I taught my students. We still weren't done though. So now I could teach them about the bringing down of the Berlin Wall. So we made it a big event. We put up on the smart board the shorts or a part of the speech by President Reagan about Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And then I played Tom Brokaw on the night that the wall came down as if we were actually there. Then I said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And the students were allowed to stomp and kick and destroy their clay walls. Of course, we went outside so the janitors didn't hang me up by my feet that evening. Always look out for your custodians. So this was another project that went beyond the standards. It allowed me to assess them, some token of accountability, They were excited, they were researching, and it's something that will stick with them for life than a boring test that they will forget the second they put their pencils down. So to summarize, assessments are necessary for education. They hold students accountable. They give us the data that we need to know what to reteach and to retest. However, there's more than that traditional way of doing it. You don't have to do it the way that it was done to you, right? So be relentless in finding new ways to test your students, and you can come up with many more ideas than we went over today. However, I would love for you to read the written version of this vlog on teachthisteacher.com/blogs and leave a comment, like it, subscribe to our social media channels, and leave a comment even below this video on your best ideas on how to assess your students without a test.